Carl Jung discovered something extraordinary at age 72 that changed everything we thought we knew about diabetes and aging. While most people his age were resigned to blood sugar medications and declining health, Jung found a way to maintain stable glucose levels naturally through what he called the harmony between mind and body. This wasn't just theory for him. This was his lived reality, and today I'm going to share with you the 4 strategies he developed that kept him vibrant and diabetes-free well into his 80s. How old are you right now? Drop your age in the comments below because I want to prove to you that your best years don't have to be behind you. Whether you're 60, 70, or 85, what Jung discovered can transform your relationship with your health starting today. You know that feeling when you wake up and your energy feels depleted before the day even begins? When your joints ache and you wonder if this is just what getting older means? When you look in the mirror and barely recognize the vibrant person you used to be? When you check your blood sugar and see those numbers climbing higher and higher, and your doctor suggests yet another medication? If you're nodding along, you're not alone. Millions of people over 60 are living with this reality, believing that diabetes, low energy, and physical decline are simply inevitable parts of aging. But what if I told you that Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant minds in psychology, completely rejected this narrative? At an age when most people are slowing down, Jung was discovering that the second half of life could actually be the most transformative, energetic, and purposeful period of our entire existence. He didn't just theorize about this. He lived it. He embodied it. And most importantly, he developed practical strategies that kept his blood sugar stable, his mind sharp, and his body strong until he was 85 years old. Jung had a revolutionary understanding of what he called emotional hunger. He observed that many people, especially as they age, develop patterns of eating that have nothing to do with physical nutrition and everything to do with feeding emotional voids. Loneliness, boredom, anxiety about the future, grief over losses, the feeling of being invisible or useless in society. All of these emotions, Jung noticed, create a specific type of hunger that drives us toward sugary, processed foods that spike our blood glucose and leave us feeling worse than before. Think about your own eating patterns for a moment. Do you find yourself reaching for sweets when you're feeling lonely? Do you snack mindlessly when you're worried about your health or your family? Do you turn to comfort foods when you're grieving the loss of friends or mourning the person you used to be? Jung understood that this wasn't a failure of willpower. This was the psyche trying to heal itself through food, but using the wrong medicine. Here's what's fascinating about Jung's approach. While modern medicine focuses almost exclusively on the physical aspects of diabetes, measuring glucose levels and prescribing medications, Jung recognized that stable blood sugar was actually a reflection of stable emotions. When we address the emotional roots of our eating patterns, when we heal the psychological wounds that drive us toward sugar, our bodies naturally begin to regulate glucose more effectively. But Jung didn't stop at psychological insights. He was intensely practical. He understood that the mind and body are not separate entities but one integrated system. So he developed 4 specific strategies that work on both the emotional and physical levels simultaneously. These aren't complicated medical interventions or expensive treatments. These are simple, powerful practices that anyone can implement regardless of their current health status or financial situation. The first thing Jung noticed was how unconsciously most people eat. We shovel food into our mouths while watching television, while worried about bills, while thinking about everything except the nourishment we're receiving. Jung called this unconscious eating a form of spiritual poverty. When we eat without awareness, he said, we're not just feeding our bodies, we're feeding our shadows, our unconscious patterns, our unresolved emotions. So Jung developed what he called conscious eating, and it started with something incredibly simple: 3 deep breaths before every meal. Not as a religious ritual or a mystical practice, but as a way to shift from the stressed, scattered mental state that most of us live in into a calm, present awareness that allows our digestive system to function optimally. When you're stressed, your body produces cortisol. Cortisol interferes with insulin sensitivity, making it harder for your cells to absorb glucose from your bloodstream. This means that even if you're eating healthy foods, stress can cause your blood sugar to spike. But when you take 3 conscious breaths before eating, you activate what scientists now call the parasympathetic nervous system. Your heart rate slows, your cortisol levels drop, and your body shifts into a state where it can actually process food efficiently. Jung practiced this religiously. Every meal, whether he was eating alone in his study or dining with colleagues, he would pause, breathe deeply 3 times, and set an intention for nourishment. He said this simple practice transformed not just his digestion, but his entire relationship with food. Instead of eating to escape emotions, he was eating to honor his body's needs. Tell me, when was the last time you ate a meal in complete presence and awareness? When did you last pause before eating to acknowledge the nourishment you were about to receive? Try this for just 1 week. Before every meal, take 3 deep, slow breaths. Notice how different the food tastes. Notice how your body responds. Come back here and share your experience in the comments. I want to hear how this simple practice affects your energy and your sense of well-being. But conscious breathing was just the beginning of Jung's approach to diabetes prevention. The second strategy he developed was even more profound, and it involved what he called mapping the emotional landscape of hunger. Jung understood that behind every craving there's an emotion-seeking expression. He noticed that his patients, particularly those over 60, often developed what he called emotional eating patterns that had nothing to do with physical hunger. They would reach for cookies when they felt invisible in their families. They would crave ice cream when they were grieving the loss of independence. They would binge on bread when they felt anxious about their diminishing role in society. So Jung developed a practice he called emotional mapping. Instead of judging these cravings or trying to suppress them with willpower, he encouraged people to become curious about them. What emotion was present when the craving arose? What was the body really asking for? What need was trying to be met through food? Jung kept what he called a feelings and food journal. Every time he felt drawn to eat something, especially something sweet or processed, he would pause and ask himself 3 questions. First, what am I feeling right now? Second, what happened in the last few hours that might have triggered this emotion? And third, what does this emotion actually need that has nothing to do with food? This practice revealed something fascinating. Jung discovered that most emotional eating happened during what he called transition moments, the space between finishing one activity and starting another, the gap between morning and afternoon, the bridge between being useful and feeling useless. These in-between moments, he realized, were when we feel most vulnerable to blood sugar spikes, because we're unconsciously trying to fill emotional voids with glucose. For example, Jung noticed that he often craved sweets in the late afternoon, around 4 o'clock. Initially, he assumed this was just natural hunger, but through his emotional mapping practice, he discovered that 4 o'clock was when he typically finished his most productive work of the day. The craving wasn't for sugar, it was for a sense of continued purpose and meaning. Once he recognized this pattern, he started scheduling meaningful activities for late afternoon, a walk in his garden, letter writing to colleagues, reading poetry. The sugar cravings disappeared because the emotional need was being met directly. This is revolutionary for diabetes prevention, because emotional eating is one of the primary drivers of blood sugar instability in people over 60. We live in a culture that often makes older adults feel invisible, burdensome, or irrelevant. When you feel this way emotionally, your psyche searches for quick sources of comfort and energy. Sugar provides both, but only temporarily. Then you crash, both physically and emotionally, creating a cycle that leads directly to insulin resistance and eventually diabetes. But when you understand the emotional triggers behind your eating patterns, you can address the root cause instead of just managing the symptoms. Jung found that once people identified their emotional eating patterns, they could develop specific strategies for meeting those emotional needs in healthier ways. Are you someone who eats when you're lonely? Jung would suggest calling a friend or writing in a journal instead of reaching for food. Do you crave sweets when you're bored? He would recommend engaging in a creative project or learning something new. Do you turn to food when you're anxious about your health? Jung advocated for gentle movement, meditation, or meaningful conversation with someone you trust. The key insight here is that emotional eating isn't a character flaw or a lack of discipline. It's your psyche's attempt to heal itself. The problem is that we're using the wrong medicine. Food can nourish the body, but it cannot heal loneliness, boredom, anxiety, or grief. Only human connection, meaningful activity, creative expression, and emotional processing can address these deeper needs. Jung practiced emotional mapping for over 20 years, and he credited this practice with keeping his blood sugar stable and his energy consistent throughout his 70s and 80s. He said that once you understand the emotional landscape of your hunger, eating becomes an act of self-awareness rather than self-medication. Try this practice for yourself starting today. Keep a small notebook or use your phone to track not just what you eat, but what you're feeling when you want to eat. Notice patterns. Are there specific emotions that consistently trigger cravings? Are there certain times of day when you're more vulnerable to emotional eating? Are there particular situations or environments that make you reach for food when you're not physically hungry? After 1 week of emotional mapping, you'll start to see patterns that have probably been invisible to you for years. Once you see these patterns clearly, you can begin to develop alternative strategies for meeting those emotional needs. Come back and share what you discover. What emotions are driving your food choices? What needs are you trying to meet through eating? This awareness alone can dramatically improve your blood sugar stability. But Jung didn't stop with emotional mapping. His third strategy was perhaps the most practical and immediately beneficial for glucose control. Jung discovered that what you do in the 20 minutes after eating is just as important as what you eat. Most people finish a meal and immediately sit down to watch television, read, or return to sedentary work. Jung realized this was a missed opportunity for natural blood sugar regulation. Jung developed what he called the post-meal ritual, and it was beautifully simple. After every lunch, without exception, Jung would take a 10-minute walk. Not a vigorous exercise session or a strenuous hike, just a gentle, mindful walk, usually in his garden or around his neighborhood. He would walk slowly, breathing deeply, often reflecting on something meaningful from his morning work or setting intentions for his afternoon. What Jung understood intuitively, modern science now confirms. Light physical movement after eating dramatically improves glucose metabolism. When you walk after a meal, your muscles naturally absorb glucose from your bloodstream to fuel the movement. This prevents the blood sugar spike that typically occurs 30 to 60 minutes after eating. Even a gentle 10-minute walk can reduce post-meal glucose levels by 20 to 30%. But Jung's post-meal walks weren't just about blood sugar. They were about integration. Jung believed that eating should be followed by a period of gentle movement that allows the body to properly assimilate not just the food, but the experiences and insights of the day. He said these walks helped him process emotions, solve problems, and maintain what he called psychological digestion alongside physical digestion. Jung's walks were meditative and intentional. He would often focus on a single question or challenge from his work. Or he would practice gratitude, mentally reviewing the positive aspects of his day. Sometimes he would simply observe nature, noticing the changing seasons, the behavior of birds, the growth of plants. This combination of gentle movement and mindful attention created what Jung called a state of integrated well-being, where body, mind, and spirit were working in harmony. The beauty of Jung's post-meal walking practice is that it requires no special equipment, no gym membership, no complicated scheduling. You simply finish eating and step outside for 10 minutes. If weather doesn't permit outdoor walking, Jung would pace slowly through his house, focusing on his breathing and allowing his body to gently process the meal he had just consumed. Jung noticed that people who adopted this practice experienced not just better blood sugar control, but improved mood, better sleep, and enhanced mental clarity throughout the afternoon. The walk seemed to prevent what he called the post-meal mental fog that many people experience, especially as they age. Instead of feeling sluggish and tired after eating, Jung maintained steady energy and sharp thinking well into his 80s. Start implementing this practice with your very next meal. After you finish eating, resist the urge to sit down immediately. Instead, step outside if possible, or find a space where you can walk slowly for 10 minutes. Focus on your breathing. Notice your surroundings. Allow your mind to wander gently, rather than forcing specific thoughts. Pay attention to how your body feels. Notice any changes in your energy level or mental clarity. This simple practice, when done consistently, can be more effective for blood sugar control than many medications. But perhaps Jung's most practical contribution to diabetes prevention was his discovery of what he called the 5 foods of longevity. Through years of careful observation and experimentation, Jung identified 5 specific foods that seemed to naturally regulate blood sugar while providing sustained energy and mental clarity. These weren't exotic or expensive ingredients. They were simple, accessible foods that Jung incorporated into his daily meals with remarkable results. The first of Jung's longevity foods was cinnamon. Jung noticed that when he added just half a teaspoon of cinnamon to his morning oatmeal or afternoon tea, his energy remained stable throughout the day without the typical mid-morning or afternoon crashes. Modern research now shows that cinnamon contains compounds that improve insulin sensitivity and help cells absorb glucose more efficiently. Jung didn't know the scientific mechanisms, but he understood the practical benefits. He said cinnamon seemed to create what he called metabolic harmony, where his body could access steady energy without dramatic peaks and valleys. Jung's second longevity food was apple cider vinegar. Every morning, Jung would mix 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar with a glass of water and drink it before his first meal. He said this practice seemed to set his digestive system up for success throughout the entire day. He experienced fewer cravings, more stable energy, and what he described as a sense of metabolic clarity. Science now confirms that apple cider vinegar can reduce post-meal blood sugar spikes by up to 30% by slowing the absorption of carbohydrates and improving insulin function. The third food in Jung's longevity arsenal was walnuts. Jung would eat a small handful of walnuts every afternoon, usually around 3 o'clock. He noticed that this prevented the late afternoon energy crash that plagued many of his colleagues. Walnuts are rich in healthy fats and protein that provide sustained energy without raising blood sugar. They also contain omega-3 fatty acids that support brain health and reduce inflammation. Jung said walnuts were like fuel for both body and mind, providing the steady energy needed for deep thinking and creative work. Jung's fourth longevity food was fatty fish, particularly salmon and sardines. At least 3 times per week, Jung would have fish for lunch or dinner. He said fish seemed to provide a type of nourishment that kept both his body and mind functioning optimally. Fish is rich in high-quality protein and omega-3 fatty acids that support stable blood sugar and brain health. Jung noticed that on days when he ate fish, his mental clarity was sharper and his energy more consistent. But perhaps most interesting was Jung's 5th longevity food, what he called bitter greens. Jung made sure to include bitter vegetables, like arugula, dandelion greens, endive, and dark leafy greens in his meals regularly. He said these foods seemed to wake up his digestive system and improve his overall sense of vitality. Bitter compounds in these vegetables stimulate digestive enzymes and support liver function, which is crucial for blood sugar regulation. Jung intuitively understood that bitter flavors were medicine for the body, even though they might not immediately appeal to the palate. Jung developed a simple daily routine incorporating all 5 longevity foods. He would start each morning with apple cider vinegar and water, followed by oatmeal with cinnamon. His afternoon snack was always a handful of walnuts. 3 times per week he would have fish for a main meal, and he made sure to include bitter greens in his salads or as side dishes regularly. What's remarkable about Jung's 5 longevity foods is how simple and accessible they are. You don't need to shop at specialty stores or spend a fortune on supplements. You can find all 5 foods at any regular grocery store, and incorporating them into your daily routine requires minimal effort and expense. But Jung emphasized that these foods work best when combined with the other strategies he developed. The conscious breathing before meals creates the optimal digestive state. The emotional mapping ensures you're eating for nourishment, rather than to fill emotional voids. The post-meal walking helps your body efficiently process whatever you've consumed. And the 5 longevity foods provide the specific nutrients needed for stable blood sugar and sustained energy. Try incorporating just one of Jung's longevity foods into your routine this week. Add cinnamon to your morning coffee or oatmeal. Try apple cider vinegar before breakfast. Snack on walnuts instead of processed foods. Include fish in 2 or 3 meals. Add bitter greens to your salads. Start with whichever food appeals to you most and notice how it affects your energy and well-being. Share your experience in the comments. Which of Jung's longevity foods are you most excited to try? How do these simple changes make you feel throughout the day? What made Jung's approach so revolutionary wasn't just the individual strategies he developed, but how he understood the deeper connection between emotional well-being and physical health. Jung recognized that diabetes isn't just a metabolic disorder. It's often a reflection of what he called spiritual diabetes, a disconnection from meaning, purpose, and authentic self-expression that manifests in the body as blood sugar instability. Jung observed that many people develop diabetes during major life transitions: retirement, loss of a spouse, children leaving home, declining physical abilities, social isolation. These transitions often trigger what Jung called an identity crisis. When we lose our sense of who we are and what our purpose is, we unconsciously seek comfort and energy through food, particularly sugar. The temporary boost that sugar provides becomes a substitute for the lasting fulfillment that comes from meaningful engagement with life. This is why Jung's approach to diabetes prevention was always holistic. He understood that stable blood sugar was actually a byproduct of stable emotions, clear purpose, and authentic self-expression. When these deeper needs are met, the body naturally regulates itself more effectively. When these needs are neglected, even the best diet and exercise programs often fail because they're addressing symptoms rather than root causes. Jung lived this philosophy until his death at 85. Even in his final years, he maintained remarkable physical and mental vitality because he never stopped growing, learning, and contributing. He continued writing, seeing patients, and developing new ideas well into his 80s. He said that the second half of life was not about decline and deterioration, but about harvesting the wisdom gained through decades of experience and using that wisdom to serve something larger than oneself. Modern research is now confirming what Jung understood intuitively about the connection between purpose and physical health. Studies show that people who have a strong sense of meaning and purpose in life have significantly lower rates of diabetes, heart disease, and cognitive decline. They live longer, maintain better physical function, and experience greater life satisfaction throughout their later years. Purpose, it turns out, is not just good for the soul, it's medicine for the body. So how do you cultivate this sense of purpose that Jung saw as essential for healthy aging? Jung believed that the second half of life was about what he called individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are rather than who others expect you to be. This often means letting go of roles and identities that no longer serve you and discovering new ways to express your authentic self. For some people, this might mean pursuing creative interests that were neglected during the busy years of career and family raising. For others, it might involve mentoring younger people or volunteering for causes they care about. Some find purpose in spiritual exploration or in sharing their life experiences through writing or storytelling. The specific form doesn't matter as much as the sense of meaningful engagement with something that feels personally significant. Jung also emphasized the importance of what he called conscious aging. Instead of viewing aging as a series of losses to be mourned, Jung saw it as an opportunity for deeper wisdom, greater authenticity, and more meaningful contribution. He encouraged people to ask themselves what gifts their life experience had given them that they could now share with others. What wisdom had they gained through their struggles and successes? How could their unique perspective serve the world in ways that weren't possible when they were younger? This shift in perspective from aging as decline to aging as opportunity can dramatically impact both emotional and physical well-being. When you see yourself as someone who is still growing, contributing, and becoming rather than someone who is diminishing and deteriorating, your entire physiology responds differently. Stress hormones decrease, immune function improves, and yes, blood sugar regulation becomes more stable. Jung's 4 strategies for diabetes prevention work because they address both the physical and psychological aspects of health simultaneously. The conscious breathing before meals creates presence and reduces stress. The emotional mapping helps you understand and meet your deeper needs without using food as medicine. The post-meal walking integrates physical movement with mindful reflection. And the 5 longevity foods provide optimal nutrition for both body and brain. But perhaps most importantly, Jung's approach gives you back a sense of agency and empowerment over your health. Instead of feeling like a victim of aging or genetics, you become an active participant in your own well-being. You discover that many of the health challenges associated with aging are not inevitable, but are actually the result of unconscious patterns that can be changed through awareness and intentional action. Jung often said that the privilege of your lifetime is being who you are. This becomes even more true as we age. The second half of life offers opportunities for authenticity, wisdom, and contribution that simply aren't available when we're younger. Your age isn't a limitation. It's your qualification for a deeper, more meaningful way of living. If you're over 60, you're not too old to transform your health. You're not too set in your ways to develop new habits. You're not too late to discover new sources of meaning and purpose. Jung proved this through his own life, maintaining vitality and continuing to contribute until his final days. The strategies he developed aren't just theories. They're practical tools that can help you not just prevent diabetes, but create the kind of vibrant, purposeful later life that Jung believed was every person's birthright. Start today with just one small step. Take 3 conscious breaths before your next meal. Notice what emotions are present when you feel like eating. Take a 10-minute walk after lunch. Add cinnamon to your morning routine. Begin keeping a journal of your experiences. Each small change creates momentum for larger transformations. Your best years don't have to be behind you. According to Jung, they're just beginning. If this message resonates with you, please subscribe to join our community of people who are redefining what it means to age consciously and purposefully. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that 60, 70, or 80 can be the beginning of their most vibrant chapter, not the end. You're not just managing your health. You're creating your legacy, and that legacy starts with the next choice you make.